Welcome everyone to this 3-part tutorial series where we're going to be creating this Sci-Fi Passage in Blender. So in this part, in part 1, we're going to start by modeling the Sci-Fi Passage. Then in part 2, we are going to be modeling the back wall at the very end of the passage, and we'll also be adding a camera and just finishing up all the modeling. And then in part 3, we're going to do the materials and the lighting, and then we're going to render the scene, and then we'll also do some compositing to get a really nice finished image. Now I am going to be doing this tutorial in the Cycles render engine because I am going for realism, but if you wanted to, you could totally use Blender Eevee, although if you are using Blender Eevee, then the emission material isn't actually going to light up the scene, and in this tutorial I'm going to be using Cycles, and so I'm going to be adding some emission materials to the Sci-Fi Passage, and then that is actually going to be lighting up the scene. So if you want to use the Eevee rendering engine in this tutorial, you totally can, but you'll just need to add some regular lights and kind of put them around the Sci-Fi Passage to actually light it up. And if you like creating sci-fi corridors in Blender, then there are some other videos that you might want to check out after this tutorial series. So on my YouTube channel, I have a tutorial series on how to create this sci-fi tunnel in Blender Eevee. Links in the description if you'd like to check that out. And then I also have a tutorial course that I'm selling on my Gumroad store, and that is a 5-part tutorial series on how to create this sci-fi space station corridor. I'll have a link in the description to that tutorial course as well, and purchasing that course is a really great way to help support me and this channel. And another great way to help support me and this channel is by purchasing the finished tutorial files. So on my Gumroad store, you can purchase the tutorial files for this Sci-Fi Passage, and you also get access to the tutorial files if you join my Patreon page. And another great way to show your support is by sending a super thanks underneath this video here on YouTube. And then just one more thing before we continue, I wanted to thank this video's sponsor, Sketchfab. Sketchfab is a 3D model marketplace where you can buy, sell, and even upload your own 3D models and preview them in your browser. You can also purchase models and assets from Sketchfab's huge 3D model store. Use the model inspector to preview the wireframe, matcap, textures, and more before you purchase. Check out Sketchfab with the link in the description. Alright, now for the metal material in the Sci-Fi Passage, I am going to be using this Metal 011, and this is a free texture from a website called Ambient CG. So I'll have the link in the description if you'd like to download the same free texture that I'm using. And I am going to be downloading the 4K version, that is the size of the texture, and I'll also download the JPEG version over the PNG because the JPEG has a little bit smaller file size. So I'm going to be using the 4K JPEG, so you can just click on that to download the textures. And we'll be applying this texture to the Sci-Fi Passage in part 3 of the tutorial series. Alright, so here I am in a new scene in Blender. And my screencast keys are also going to be right down here in the corner so you can see what buttons I'm pressing. So I'm going to start off by double tapping the A key to select everything, and then I'm going to press X to delete, and we're just going to click on delete. Always make sure you delete the default cube because you can't use the default cube, you have to delete it and then add a new one. So I'm now going to press Shift A, and let's go right here to mesh, and I'm just going to add a new cube. So I'm now going to press the tab key, and the tab key is going to take me into edit mode of the cube, and we're going to start to model the Sci-Fi Passage. So I'm going to press the 7 on the numpad, and this 7 on the numpad is going to take me to top view, and then I just want to bring the cube over here in edit mode because we are going to be adding a mirror modifier to mirror the Sci-Fi Passage, so that way we can just model one side and then it will be mirrored over to the other side. Press the A key to make sure the cube is selected and make sure you're in edit mode, and I'm going to press G to grab, and I'm just going to bring this right over here so it's on this side of the grid. So I now want to add a mirror modifier. So to do this, I'm going to click right over here on the modifier properties, and then I'm going to click on add modifier, and we're just going to add the mirror modifier right here. And you can see it's mirroring it over on the x-axis, and that is what I want. So you can see the cube is being mirrored from this side over to that side. And just click on the X to make sure it's mirroring it over on the x-axis. So I'm going to press the 7 on the numpad to go back to the top view. Now on the y-axis, which is this line, line, I want it to be about 2 grids long. So if I zoom out here, you can see that there are these little grids. So if I press G to grab, I'm going to bring this over and bring it pretty close, and you can see that is about 2 grids long there. So we have 1 grid and then 2 grids on the y-axis. And then on the x-axis, I want it to be about 7 grids long. So I'm going to hold down the Z button and move my mouse over to the wireframe and let go. And I can press A to deselect. I'm going to press B for the box select, and I'm just going to click and drag and just make a box right around there. So I can press G to grab, and I'm going to bring this out on the x-axis, and I want to bring this out by about 7 grids. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, just like that. And then I can also press the 1 on the numpad, and that is going to take me to a front view. Now on the z-axis, going up and down here with the blue line, I want this to be about 6 grids tall. So I'm going to press the A key to select everything, and then I can press S to scale, and we want to scale this up on the z-axis, so just hit Z. And then I just want to scale it up, and you can see it's already 2 grids tall, so I want to scale it up so it's 3, 4, and 5, 6. So just click to place that there, so you can see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 grids tall. So now I want to cut out a hole here to actually make the Sci-Fi Passage. So to do this, I need to add some loop cuts. So I'm going to press Control R, and that's going to add a loop cut, and then I'm going to scroll my mouse wheel out until I have 2 loop cuts. Then I can just left click and then right click so it stays there in the center. Now I want to scale these loop cuts up so that there are about 4 grids in between these 2 loops. So I'm going to press S to scale. I'm going to hit Z to scale it on the Z axis, and I'm going to scale that up and place it right about there. So now you can see there's 1 grid there, then there's 4 grids in the center, and then there's another grid at the end. So I now want to add a loop cut going up and down. So I'm going to press Control R to add a loop cut, and then I'm going to left click, and that is going to place the loop cut, and then it's going to turn on the edge slide, and I want to bring the loop cut over until it is about 3 grids out from the center. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to place it right there. Then I'm going to press the A key to deselect everything, and I just want to select the bottom loops here. So I'm going to press B for the box select. I'm just going to click and drag a box right around those vertices. Then I can press G to grab, and I want to bring these out on the x-axis, and I just want to bring them 1 grid over and then place that there. And that way on the Sci-Fi Passage, the side walls are going to have kind of a cool sci-fi slant to them. So I'm going to now hold down the Z button and move my mouse over to the solid view, and I'm just going to navigate up here. So this is where the Sci-Fi Passage is going to be, so I want to actually delete the faces in here. So to do this, I'm going to click right here, and this is going to go to the face select. And then I can just click on this face, and I'm going to press X to delete, and we're just going to delete the faces. And then I can click here, X to delete, let's delete the faces, and also the one right in here, X to delete, and we're going to delete the faces. All right, and then also you can see right in here, I didn't actually push these together yet to connect them with the mirror, and that's because there are some faces in here, and you don't want extra faces in there. So I'm going to select this face, X to delete, we're going to delete the faces. We don't want that extra face there because it's going to be merged with the mirror. And then I can select this face, X to delete, and we just want to delete the faces. All right, now right in here, you can kind of see the inside of that metal piece there, and so I actually want to add faces right here. So I'm going to click right here to go to the vertex select, and then I can select this face and then hold down the shift key and select all of these faces. Then I can press the F key, and that's going to fill a face there. And then I can select this vertex, hold down the shift key, select this vertex, and I can now just press the F key, that'll fill a face up there, and then the F key again, and that'll fill a face there. All right, so I now want to bring these into the mirror. So what I'm going to do is actually turn on this clipping button right here. And if you turn on the clipping button, then it's going to merge the vertices which are in the center there of the mirror. So I'm going to press the A key to make sure everything is selected, and then I can press G to grab, and then I just want to bring this in on the x-axis, and I'm going to stick that together. So now if I try to grab it and pull it back, you can see it's connecting there with the mirror. So that's exactly what I want. So then right down here in this corner and also this corner up here, I want to add some bevels to make them round. So I'm going to select this vertex, hold down the shift key and select this vertex, and then I can press the 1 on the numpad, and that is going to go to the front view. So with those vertices selected, I can press Control B, and Control B is going to add a bevel, and I want to bring that out, but then I want to scroll my mouse wheel out, and I want to scroll my mouse wheel until there are about 10 cuts. segments. So if you look right down there on the bottom of the screen, you can see it says segments. And if I scroll this, you can see it's going to change the number. It's right down there underneath my mouse. So I want to scroll this until it says 10 segments. So 14, 13, 11, and 10. All right. And then I'm going to just place it right about there. So now there are 10 segments in there on the bevel. And then I want to select this vertex, hold down the shift key, select this vertex, and I can press 1 on the numpad again to go to the front view. And then I want to do the same thing, and I want to make the bevel about the same size. So I'm going to press Control B. Control B is going to add a bevel, and you can see there's already 10 segments because that's what we did with the last bevel. And then I'm just going to bring my mouse out and place it there. So now you can see we have a bevel right up there and also a bevel right down there. So that's looking really cool. So I now want to duplicate this part of the tunnel, and I want to move it over. So I'm going to press 7 on the numpad for top view, and make sure you're still in edit mode when you do this. So I'm going to press the A key just to make sure everything is selected, and then I want to duplicate this piece and move it over. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, and then I can click and hold with my mouse wheel to constrain it to the y-axis. And I want to bring this over by about 5 grids. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm just going to stick it right there. So now we have another one of those pieces there for the Sci-Fi Passage. Let's press 7 for top view, and I now want to take this piece and I want to bring it out to make it longer. So I'm going to hold down the Z button, go back into the wireframe, and then I'm going to press the A key to deselect everything. So I can press B for the box select. I'm just going to box select just this side, and I want to bring it out to make it thicker. So I'm going to press G to grab, and you can click and hold with your mouse wheel and then let go to constrain it to the y-axis. And I want to bring this out so it's 6 grids long. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and just place it right about there. So now if I hold down the Z button and go back into the solid view, we have a bigger piece and then a smaller piece. And then I should have mentioned this earlier, but let's save this Blender file. So I'm just going to press the tab key to go back to object mode, and then I can just click on file, and then I'm going to click on save as, or you can press Shift Control S. And then I'm just going to locate to a folder where I'm saving all of the tutorial files, and I'm just going to save this as Sci-Fi Passage tutorial. All right, so now as you're working on the project, you can press Control S, and Control S is going to save the Blender file. All right, so I now want to do some more work inside the Sci-Fi tunnel. But when I'm in edit mode, I can see the other side of the Sci-Fi tunnel, and I don't really want to be able to see this, but I do want the Mirror Modifier to be applied. So what I can do, if I press the tab key to go into edit mode, I can click on this button right here. And this way, it's not going to show the modifier in edit mode, but then when we press the tab key to go back to object mode, it's going to show the modifier. So this way I can tab into edit mode, and we have a lot more space, and we can kind of get in here and we can add all the little sci-fi details in the tunnel. But then when we press the tab key to go back to object mode, now we're able to see the mirror modifier. So I'm just going to click on that button to turn it off so that I can't see the mirror in edit mode. So I now want to add a metal piece right in here, which are connecting these two parts of the passage. So to do this, I want to select these vertices here. So I want to hold down the Alt key and just Alt select that loop right there, and then hold down the Shift and Alt key and select that loop right there. So now we have those loops selected, and then I'm also just going to hold down the Shift key and select that loop right there, and also hold down the Shift key and select that loop right there. And then I also want to just hold down the Shift key and select that vertice right there, and hold down the Shift key and select that vertex right there. So I now want to duplicate the selected loop. So to do this, I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, and then I'm going to bring this over on the y-axis and just stick it right there. Then I'm going to press the 1 on the numpad, and that is going to take me to the front view, and I can hold down the Z button, and I'm going to move my mouse over into wireframe. So I now just want to scale it out. So I'm going to press S to scale, and I'm going to scale this out, and then I can press G to grab, and I'm going to bring it back a little bit and scale it up a little bit more because I want this part to be smaller. So you can now see that part is smaller, and make sure that the width right here is pretty similar all the way around. It doesn't need to be exact, but just make sure it's pretty close. So you can scale it and then move it around. All right, just like that, I'm going to hold down the Z button, go back into solid view. So now that that's smaller, I can just bring it back, and I can bring it into one of these pieces, and then I can just extrude it over. So I'm going to press G to grab, and I'm going to bring it over on the y-axis and stick it inside that piece. So I can now press E to extrude, and then I want to extrude this out on the y-axis, so hit Y, and I'm going to bring it right in there and then just stick it inside that piece. All right, so now if I press tab to go back to object mode, you can see we actually have a piece there. Now you can see that the shading looks a little bit weird, and this is because we need to recalculate the normals or flip the normals. And I can just tell because the shading looks a little bit weird. The shading looks different from this object, but if you're not sure, you can click right out here on this drop down, and then you can click on the face orientation. So we want to see the blue, but we don't want to see the red. So basically all of the faces in Blender have an inside and an outside, and the outside is blue, so you always want to see the blue. So I'm just going to click right here and turn off the face orientation. So I'm just going to press the tab key to go back to edit mode, and I just want to select this entire thing. So to do this, I'm going to click right over here to go to the face select, and then I'm going to hold down the Alt key and just Alt select that loop right there, so it's going to select all those faces. Now to recalculate the normals, I can press Shift N, that's going to recalculate the normals, and then just to check, you can click right here, and we are now in the edit mode. Let's actually press the tab key to go back to object mode, and then I can click right up here. Now there's not as many settings, and I can just click on the face orientation, and you can see it actually didn't do it. So if I just press the tab key to go back into edit mode, if I press Shift N, you can see it's not doing it, and that's because this is curving in, and so it thinks that this is the outside of the faces. And that makes sense for most objects, but in this case, we actually want to see the inside because we are actually creating a passageway or a tunnel. So what I want to do after I press Shift N is I want to click on this thing right here, which is above me, the recalculate normals. I'm going to click on this to open it up, and then I can just click on inside, and that is just going to manually switch it. So then I can click on the arrow to close that, and then I can just tab to go back to object mode. So I'm going to click on the arrow right here, and then I can just click on the face orientation to hide that from the viewport overlays. Let's press Control S again to save the file. So I'm now going to press the tab key to go back into edit mode, and I actually want to take this entire piece and duplicate it and kind of bring it back here. So I'm going to press the A key to deselect everything, and then I can just press the L key with my mouse hovered over this piece. And that is going to select all of the linked vertices, so it's going to select all of the vertices which are connected to each other. So I can now press 3 on the numpad, and that is going to take me to the side view. And then I want to duplicate this over so that there's about one grid in between them. So I'm going to press Shift D, that is going to duplicate the geometry that's selected, and then I just want to click with my mouse wheel and let go to bring it on the y-axis, and I just want to stick it right there so that there's about one grid in between. Maybe just bring that over a little bit. All right, so that's pretty good. Now you can see that there's a little bit of a gap right there in the Sci-Fi Passage, and so I just want to select this loop and kind of bring it over. So I'm going to press the 1 on the top of my keyboard, or you can also click right here to go to the vertex select, and then I'm just going to hold down the Alt key and just select that loop right there. So if I hold down the Z button, go into the wireframe, you can see by holding down the Alt key and selecting that loop right there, it's going to select the entire ring of vertices. So I can press G to grab, click with my mouse wheel and let go, bring it over on the y-axis and stick it right there, and then I can hold down the Z button, go back into solid view, and now you can see that's been brought over, so we've filled that little gap right there. So I'm just going to press the tab key to go back to object mode. Now, as well as it being mirrored over back and forth here on the x-axis, I also want to mirror it over here on the y-axis. So that way this corner right here is going to be mirrored over here, and then also over here, and it will also be mirrored over here. And then we'll have one big piece, and then after we create that big piece, we'll be adding the array modifier to array the entire mesh over. And so this way we actually only need to model a very small part of the Sci-Fi Passage, and it'll be mirrored over and arrayed over to create the rest of the passage. So to do this, I first want to bring it back over here because we've been editing this in edit mode. And so when you edit objects in edit mode, the origin point stays in the very center. Now, if you zoom in here, you can see there is that little orange dot there, and that is the object's origin. So if you tab into object mode and press G to grab and kind of move this around, you can see the origin point is going to move because we are moving the entire object. If I press the tab key now to go into edit mode and then press G to grab, you can see we are moving the mesh, but we're not actually moving the object's location. And so wherever the object's origin is, that is the center point of where the mirror modifier is going to mirror the mesh. And so I want to bring this over to the side so that we can mirror it over. So I'm going to press G to grab, and then I'm going to bring this over on the y-axis, and I'm just going to bring it way out here. And then I actually want to preview what the mirror modifier is doing. So I'm going to click on this button just to turn that on. All right, so you can see the mirror modifier is mirroring it over on the x-axis, so it's mirroring it over back and forth, but then I want to mirror it forward and backwards, so I'm also going to check the y, and now it's going to mirror that forward and backwards as well. Now before I stick these together to complete the Sci-Fi Passage, I do want to make the Sci-Fi Passage a little bit longer. So what I'm going to do is edit this part of the mesh right here, and then we're actually going to be duplicating that over just to give a bit more variation, and we're going to stick that right there, and then they'll be connected together. So I'm going to press G to grab, and I'm going to bring that a little bit more over on the y-axis. And then I can click on this button again, and that is going to turn off the mirror modifier in edit mode. So it's still taking effect, but we just can't see it in the edit mode if you click on that button. So I now want to add some sci-fi details right in here. So the first thing that I want to do is add some loop cuts here. So I'm going to press Control R to add a loop cut, and then move your mouse around, and you can see there is the loop cut. So I'm going to left click to place the loop cut, and then I'm just going to bring it over to about there, and then left click again. And then I want to add another loop cut right over here. So I'm going to press Control R, and then I'm going to left click, and then I can edge slide that over and then place it there. Basically, I want these loop cuts to be about in the center there between these two little metal beams right there. So I'm now going to click right here to go to the face select. You can also press the 3 on the top of your keyboard. And I just want to select this face. So I now want to inset the face. So I'm going to press the I key. The I key is going to inset a face. So now there's a face within that face. And I'm just going to bring it down and stick it right there. And then I can also press S to scale. And let's scale this in on the y-axis a little bit. Now I'm going to go over to the side here, and I'm actually going to press the period on the numpad. That's going to jump me over to the side, and I want to extrude this back. So to do this, I can press the E key. The E key will extrude that back, and I'm just going to stick that right there. So just like that. Now I also want to add some Sci-Fi Pipes, which are kind of going back and forth here. So to do this, make sure you are in the edit mode, and I'm going to press Shift A, and then I'm going to go right here and add a cylinder. Now when you add the cylinder, it's going to be added wherever the 3D cursor was located, and also make sure you add the cylinder in the object's edit mode because we want it to be in the same object. Now I want to move this over, but if I try to bring it over right now, you can see there's going to be problems with the mirror modifier because we have this clipping turned on. So I'm just going to turn the clipping off, and then I can press G to grab, bring it over, and then S to scale that down, place it there, and then I can just click on the clipping to turn that on. Now you can see we have some faces here on the side, but I actually don't want these faces. I don't need them. So I'm going to select this face and then hold down the Shift key and select this bottom face here, and I can press X to delete, and we want to delete the faces. So I'm now going to hover my mouse over this object and press the L key. That is going to select the linked vertices, and then I just want to bring this over and kind of fit it right in there. So I'm going to press G to grab, bring that over there, bring it over here. Then I can press R to rotate, and we're just going to rotate this on the x-axis, and I can type in 9, 0, and enter to rotate that over by 90 degrees. And then I can press G to grab, and G to grab, and then S to scale, and we're just going to stick that right in there. And then I want to scale it out, so let's press S to scale, and I want to hit Y to scale it out on the Y-axis, and I'm going to stick it right in there so it fits those beams there. And you can also press the 1 on the numpad to go to front view, hold down the Z button and go into wireframe, and I can scale this up a little bit more and press G to grab, and I'm just going to stick it right about there, maybe bring it down a little bit. And then I do want to duplicate this and make one more, so I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, and we're just going to stick one more right up there, and then I do want to have one down here as well. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate. We're going to bring this down, and I'm going to stick this one right about there. I can hold down the Z button, go back into the solid view, and you can see what we've made. So we've just created some little Sci-Fi pipes there. And then I do want to have one more pipe right in here. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate. let's hit Z to bring it up on the Z axis. I can scale the entire thing down, and then I also want to rotate this up and down. So I'm going to press R to rotate, and let's hit X to rotate it on the X axis. And then I want to rotate it exactly over by 90 degrees. So I can just type in 90 and then enter. And this isn't going to be a metal pipe. This is actually going to be a light. So it's going to be emitting light. So I can now press 1 on the numpad. That's going to go to front view. I can hold down the Z button, go into the wireframe, and then I want to scale it up just a little bit. So I'm going to press S to scale. Let's hit Z to scale up on the Z axis, make it a little bit bigger, and then I can scale the whole thing up and kind of rotate it over. So hit R to rotate and G to grab, and I just want to stick this right in there. So now if I go right over here to side view, hold down the Z button, go into the solid view, you can see we have a little pipe in there. And if I press 3 on the numpad for side view, I also want to make this centered. So I can press G to grab, click with your mouse wheel, constrain it to the Y axis, and just make sure that is in the very center right there. All right, so that is pretty good. All right, and then I do want to add some more sci-fi details. So I want to add another sci-fi detail here on the roof. So I'm going to select this face right here, and I can just press the I key, and that's going to inset the faces. But then after I press the I key, I want to hit the B key, because the B key is going to toggle the boundary. So press the B key, and then we want to turn the boundary off. You can see right there it says boundary off, and I want to scale this down, and this way it's going to connect to the mirror modifier, because if we had this on, then you can see it's not connecting with the mirror modifier on the edge there. So I'm just going to bring that down, stick it right there, and then I can press E to extrude. We're going to bring that up, and we're just going to place it right there. And then I also want to add some more sci-fi details right down here on the floor. So let's do that. So I just want to make the floor coming up a little bit, because this is kind of a big step. It almost looks like a step or something. And I do want to bring up the floor a bit. So I'm going to select this face, hold down the shift key and select this face and also this face. And I want to extrude them up. So I'm going to press E to extrude, and we're just going to bring this up, and then we're going to stick it right there. So now there's just a little bit of a lip there, and also there's kind of that little crevice right down there, and I think that looks kind of cool on sci-fi. So if I tab to go back to object mode, you can kind of see how that's looking. So that is starting to look very cool. Let's press Control S to save, and then I can press tab to go back into edit mode. Now I also want to add some little metal pieces which are going back and forth. So I'm going to select this face right here, and I can press Shift D to duplicate. Let's hit Z to bring it up on the Z axis, and then I want to scale this, and I want to scale it on the Y axis, and we're just going to make that a bit smaller. And I'm going to be adding 4 of them along here. So I can now press S to scale. Let's scale that up just a little bit, and then I can press G to grab and bring it down on the Z axis and just stick it in there. Maybe scale it down a little bit. All right, and maybe bring it up a little bit as well. So I can now press E to extrude. We're just going to extrude that up and just kind of make a little, kind of like a metal plank there, just like that. And then I want to select the entire thing and kind of duplicate it. So with your mouse hovered over the object, you can press the L key. That's going to select the linked vertices, and I can press G to grab, and let's bring this over on the Y axis, and we're just going to stick it right over there. And maybe just press S to scale, and maybe just scale it out on the Y axis just a little. All right, so I can now press Shift D. That's going to duplicate. Click with your mouse wheel, constrain it on the Y axis, and I want to stick it right there, and just stick it right there so it is about halfway. Now, because we did that all in one action, I can now press Shift R, and Shift R is going to repeat the last action. So I can press Shift R just 2 more times, or you could just press Shift D and bring it over and stick it there, and then duplicate it again and stick it there. So now we have those cool little sci-fi pieces right there. And then I also want to add some similar sci-fi pieces just to give more detail to the ground, but instead of the metal pieces going back and forth, I want them to be going forward and backwards. So one thing that I also want to do is just hold down the Shift key and select all of these faces right here. And I can press G and Z and just bring it down a little bit. And then I just want to select one of these faces here. So I can press Shift D to duplicate. Click with your mouse wheel, we're going to bring this back right there. And then if I try to scale it, you can see it's still connected to the mirror. So I first need to turn off the clipping button, and then I can press S and we're going to scale that down. And I can also scale this on the X axis, and we're just going to scale that right down there. And now that we've scaled that down, I can just click on this button to turn the clipping back on. And then I can also scale this on the y-axis, and we're just going to scale that out like that. And then I can also press G to grab, and let's bring this over on the x-axis, and we're just going to stick that there. So now I need to give this some thickness, so I'm going to press E to extrude, bring that down. You can see it looks dark, and that is because we need to recalculate the normals. So press the L key with your mouse hovered over the object, and then you can press Shift N. That's going to recalculate the normals. So I now want to do the same thing that I did for these pieces. I want to duplicate them and move them over. So I can press Shift D to duplicate, and then I want to bring it over on the x-axis. So hit X, bring it over, stick it there, and then I can press Shift R and Shift R, and that's going to move them over. And then I'm actually going to press Ctrl Z to undo that because I want to bring this over just a little bit farther. So I can now press Shift D to duplicate, bring it over on the x-axis, stick it there, and then Shift D to duplicate, bring it over on the x-axis and stick it there. All right, that is a bit better. So if I press Tab to go back to object mode and kind of look around here, you can see we definitely have some more sci-fi details there, and that's going to add more interest to the scene. Let's press Ctrl S to save. So I'm going to press Tab to go back into edit mode, and I now want to take this whole piece right here, and I want to duplicate it and stick it over there. So I'm first going to turn off the clipping, and that way we won't have any issues with the mirror modifier. So I'm now going to press 3 on the numpad to go to side view, and I want to click right here to go to the face select. Then I can hold down the Z button, go into the wireframe, and I'll press A to deselect everything, and then I can press B for the box select, and I'm just going to drag a box around all of these faces here and let go. So now all those faces are selected, and I also want to press B for the box select those faces, and you can see those faces right there aren't being selected because the center point is right in there. So to fix this, I can hold down the Z button, go into the solid view, and then I can zoom in here, and I can just hold down the Shift and Alt key and then just select that loop. So we now have that selected. So I now want to duplicate it and move it over. So I can press Shift D to duplicate. Let's bring it over on the y-axis, and we're just going to bring that right in there. And I'm going to bring it over, so press G to grab, bring it over on the y-axis, and I want to stick this right in there. And I just want to make sure that these pipes right here are going into that piece. All right, so that is pretty good. And this way, by adding more pieces there, it's going to add more variation to the sci-fi tunnel, and it won't look like it's tiling as much. So let's press Ctrl S to save. That's looking very good. So now I want to just bring this over, bring the whole thing over. So I'm going to press the A key a few times to select everything, and I can press 7 on the numpad for top view. And I can press G to grab. Let's bring this back on the y-axis and bring it a little bit too far over there. And then I want to click on this button right here, and that is going to show the mirror modifier in edit mode. So I now want to stick this into the mirror. So what I'm going to do is turn back on the clipping button, and that way any vertices which go into the center of the mirror are going to be merged together. So I can press G to grab, bring it over on the y-axis and stick it in there, and they're just going to push that together. So now if I zoom in here, you can see right here on the edge, the sci-fi tunnel is connecting. Now there is a problem, and that is that these pipes are not connecting, so I want these pipes to be connecting. I'm just going to press the 1 on the top of my keyboard, or click right here to go to the vertex select, and then I'm going to hold down the Alt key, select that loop of vertices, and then hold down the Shift and Alt key and select that loop of vertices, and then hold down the Shift and Alt key and select that loop of vertices. So I can press G to grab, and let's bring this on the y-axis and just stick them together. We're just going to squash them into the mirror modifier, and they're going to connect because of that clipping right there. All right, so now I can tab to go back to object mode. Just look around here, and you can see that is looking very cool. So the sci-fi tunnel is really starting to come together. Let's press Ctrl S to save. So let's keep adding some details to the model. So I'm going to press the tab key to go back into edit mode, and then again I want to click on this button so that I can't see the mirror modifier in edit mode, and that's going to make it much easier to model. So I'm now just going to zoom in to this edge right here, and I want to click right here to go to the face select, and then I'm just going to select this face right here. So I can now press Shift D to duplicate, bring it over, S to scale. We're going to scale that down a little bit and bring it over, and then I can press E to extrude, and we're going to extrude that back in there. And then just select this face, and I want to give it a bit more thickness, so I can press G to grab, and let's bring this over on the y-axis, and we're just going to bring that out there to make it a bit thicker. And then again, we need to recalculate the normals, and I can just tell because the shading looks a bit off to the rest of the mesh. So tab into edit mode, and press the L key with your mouse hovered over the faces there. And then I can press Shift N, and Shift N is going to recalculate the normals. So I now want to duplicate this piece and I want to put it on all of these edges. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, click with your mouse wheel to constrain it to the y-axis and stick it there. And then I can press Shift D to duplicate, bring it over on the y-axis, stick it there. And then Shift D again to duplicate. We want to bring this over on the y-axis and stick it there. And then this piece right here is going to be connecting with the mirror, so we don't want to put that there. I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, click and hold with your mouse wheel to constrain it to the y-axis, and then navigate over here, and I want to just stick it right in there. All right, that's looking much better. So that's looking very good. So if I tab to go back to object mode, now if I look right here in the Sci-Fi Passage, you can see some more details right there. Now, if I look here on the side of the passage, kind of at the starting, you can see there are some faces here, and I actually don't want these faces because that is going to be connecting with the Array Modifier later on. You can see right over here, there are those faces right there, but I'm going to be adding the Array Modifier to array the entire thing over. So I'm going to press the Tab key to go into edit mode, and I just want to delete these faces here. So I'm just going to select this face, and then I can hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to select all of these other faces here. So just all of those faces. Then I want to delete them, so I can press X to delete, and we just want to delete the faces. So now those faces are deleted. And that does look kind of open, but we are just going to be looking at the Sci-Fi Passage right in here. Now I also want to add a little metal piece, which is kind of coming down here on both of these little areas. So I'm going to press Tab to go back to edit mode, and I'm just going to add 2 loop cuts right in here. So I'm going to press Control R to add a loop cut. I can left click and then right click so it stays in the center, and then I can press Control R and left click and right click so it stays in the center. And then I want to click right here to go to the edge select, and then I want to hold down the Shift key and select that edge. Now I want to bring these 2 edges in a little bit, so I'm going to press G to grab, click with your mouse wheel, constrain it to the y-axis, and I'm just going to stick this about there. So I can now click right here to go to the face select, and I'm going to select this face and then hold down the Shift key and select this face. So both of those faces there are selected. So I can now press E to extrude. Let's bring this down, and then I can press G to grab, and we're going to bring it over on the x-axis, and we're just going to stick it right there. And then I also want to delete this face right here because again, this face is going to be connected to the Array Modifier, so we don't actually need it. So I can just select that face. We're going to press X to delete, and I can just delete the faces. All right, tab back into object mode. You can see now we have some cool little sci-fi details there on the top. Tab back into edit mode, and I'm going to navigate right over here to this big piece right here. So right here I want to add some loop cuts, and then I want to extrude in some faces. So I'm going to press Control R, that's going to add a loop cut, but then I want to scroll my mouse wheel out until there are 6 cuts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we just need one more, 6. All right, so make sure there are 6 cuts there. So I can just left click and then right click, and that is going to place those cuts right there in the center. So now I want to click right here to go to the face select, and I'm going to select every other face. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key, select this face, and select this face, and select this face. Then I can press the period on the numpad, and that is going to zoom me into the faces. So I want to extrude the faces back, so I'm going to press E, that's going to extrude the faces back, and I'm just going to bring them back there and stick them right there. And then I can tab to go back to object mode, and I need to zoom in here a little bit so I can see that. All right, so now I have some little faces going back in there. So I now want to add a metal pipe which is going through all of these faces. So I'm going to tab to go back to edit mode, and then I want to press A to deselect everything. I'm now just going to hover my mouse over this pipe here and press the L key. That's going to select the linked vertices, and I can press Shift D to duplicate this, and I can just bring it in there, and I'm just going to stick it right down there, kind of down there at the bottom. Just bring it over and stick it right about there. And then I can also scale it up because I do want the pipe to be a little bit more thick, and bring it back a little bit. And then you can see it's going out too far, kind of here on the edges it's too long, and that's because we scaled it up. So I just need to press S to scale, and let's scale this down on the y-axis and just stick it there. All right, tab back into object mode. Let's navigate inside here and take a look at that. That is looking very cool. Let's press Control S to save the Blender file. All right, now I also want to to create another little square light. So I'm going to press tab to go back to edit mode. And right here in between these two pieces here, I want to add a small little light here. So I'm actually going to select this face right here, and then I can press Shift D to duplicate, and let's bring this over on the Y-axis. And then I can scale this down a little bit. And then I also want to scale it down on the Y-axis. So hit S to scale and then Y, and I'm just going to bring that down there. And then I'm going to press the 1 on the numpad. That's going to go to the front view. I can hold down the Z button, go into the wireframe, and I can press G to grab, and I want to bring this back. And I'm going to bring it back right over here so it's very close to this edge. All right, so just about there. You can go back over here to see that better and hold down the Z button and go back into solid view. So just make sure it's about in the center there, and then I want to give it some thickness. So I can press E to extrude and just extrude that back. And then again, you can see the normals need to be recalculated, and I can just tell because the shading looks a bit off. So just press the L key to select the linked vertices, and then you can press Shift N to recalculate the normals. All right, so we're going to be using that as just a small little light. You could also scale the whole thing down a little bit if you wanted to. All right, so the next thing that I want to create is a control panel right here on this little beam. So to do this, I'm going to start by just selecting this face, and I can press the period on the numpad to zoom into it. And why I'm using this face is because this face has already been rotated correctly. So if we just use this face for the control panel, it's already going to be rotated to the side there of the corridor. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate this, and then I can press S to scale, and I'm going to scale it down and make it much smaller, so maybe something like that. Then I can press G to grab, and I'm just going to stick it right there so it's very close, and just make sure it's kind of there in the center. Then I can press E to extrude. We're going to extrude this back, and then I can press the L key with my mouse hovered over that object. That's going to select the linked vertices, and then again I need to press Shift N to recalculate the normals. And I can also just bring it in a little bit if I need to. So now I just want to model some little sci-fi details here, like some little sci-fi buttons and things. So I'm just going to select this face, and I can press Shift D to duplicate, and then S to scale. We can scale this way down, and I can just kind of put one up here, and I can also scale this up, and let's scale it up on the Y-axis and just kind of stick it there. And then I can press E to extrude. We're going to extrude that back, and again I need to just press the L key to select the linked vertices and press Shift N to recalculate the normals. Now I just want to duplicate this little sci-fi button here, and I want to kind of move them around, but I want them to be connected to this control panel. So to do this, I'm going to use the snapping feature. So you can click on this button right here, and that is going to turn on the snapping. And then there are some settings that we can change. So if you click right here, I want to change the snap to face, and this way it's actually going to snap to the different faces. So now if I press G to grab, you can see it's actually snapping our selection to the faces. So if I bring it up here, it's going to snap here. I'm just going to press Control Z though to undo that. Now there is a problem, and that is that it's kind of bringing it all the way up, and I do want it to be going through a little bit. So I'm going to click right here, and I want to go to the snap width, and I want to click on center. So now if I press G to grab, you can see it's going to be snapped there right in the center. And you can also see that where my mouse is, the object is being placed in the center of that as well. So I'm going to place this there, and then I can press Shift D to duplicate, and I want to stick another light there. Then I can press Shift D again to duplicate, and let's also scale this down on the Y-axis and make it like really, really thin. Just place that there, and then I can press S to scale, bring it up, and just kind of stick it right there, maybe make it a little bit bigger. And then I can press Shift D to duplicate, and let's stick that there. And then I'm going to press Shift D again to duplicate. Let's bring that down. Let's scale this on the Y-axis. We're going to make it basically just a square, and then I can scale it down a bit smaller, and we're just going to stick one there in the corner. And then I can press Shift D to duplicate. Let's stick one there, and let's scale this out on the Y-axis and just kind of scale it down, just kind of bring it over and stick it right about there, maybe scale it down just a little bit. And then I also want to add another one of these squares, so I'll press A to deselect, press the L key to select the linked vertices, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate, and let's stick that there. And then I also want to add some circular buttons. So I'm going to press Shift A, and let's go right here and just add a cylinder. And then the cylinder is added wherever the 3D cursor is. So if you need to, you can turn off the clipping, and then you can bring it over and scale it down, make it really small and just bring it over there. And then after you bring it over, you can just turn on the clipping button. And that way it's not going to get messed up with the mirror. Let's scale this down, and I'm going to bring it it over here, and then I want this to be facing in the same rotation. So to do this, I can press 1 on the numpad to go to front view, and I can just eyeball it. It is pretty easy just to eyeball, and you're not really going to notice it. So I'm just going to rotate that and just make it so that the front of the button is about the same angle as the control panel. And then I can press G to grab, just kind of bring that over, and I'm going to put one button there, maybe scale it up a little bit, and then I can also press Shift D to duplicate, and we're going to stick another one there. Now some of these lights and buttons, you can see they're coming out a lot, so what I'm going to do is actually turn off the snapping feature, and then I can just press the L key with my mouse hovered over some of these objects, and I want to select these ones here because you can see these ones are coming out a bit. So I can now press 1 on the numpad, that's going to go to front view, so 1 on the numpad for front view, and I can press G to grab, and I'm just going to bring them back a little bit so that they're a bit smaller. Alright, so that is it for the control panel. Now also right up here, I want to add another light on the roof. And I want the light to be right there in the center of these two metal pieces. So to do this, I can just select this piece right here, and I can press Shift D to duplicate, and I can press G to grab. Let's also bring this down on the Z axis, and I can scale it down on the Y axis, and you can see because we have the clipping turned on, if I try to push it into the mirror, it's just going to stop there at the end. So I can just kind of bring it over, maybe scale it up a little bit, and then I also need to give it some thickness. So maybe just bring this up on the Z axis a bit, and then I can press E to extrude. We're going to extrude that up and just place that there. Maybe even bring that face down a little bit. And then again, I believe I need to recalculate the normals. So if I go into object mode, I can turn on the face orientation. You can see I need to recalculate the normals. So let me just turn off the face orientation. So I can press the tab key to go to edit mode, and then hover your mouse over the object and press L to select the linked vertices. And then I can press Shift N, and Shift N is going to recalculate the normals. So now we have a little light there as well. And we are going to be adding an emission material to this object so that it'll actually be emitting light. Alright, so I'm going to press the tab key to go back to object mode. So we are almost done with the modeling. There are a few more things that I want to do. So one thing that I want to do is give this entire object the Bevel Modifier. And then I also want to shade the object smooth. Because if you look here on the sides, all of the sides of the object are pretty sharp. And that's not very realistic that it's perfectly sharp. So I want to add the Bevel Modifier just to give it a tiny little bit of a bevel on the edges. And then I can also shade the object smooth. So make sure you are in object mode, and I'm going to click on add modifier, and then right down here under generate, we can add the bevel modifier. It is the second one. Now, if I zoom in here, kind of zoom into the edges, I can start to turn the segments up, and I can also start to turn the amount up. But you can see that nothing seems to be happening. And if I tab to go into edit mode, it is actually because of these faces right here. If I select this vertex right here and press G to grab, if I start to kind of bring it out, now you can see that is working. I'm just going to press the escape key though to undo that because I don't want to move it over. What I need to do is I need to add some loop cuts which are going all around this piece. So the loop cut needs to go up and then go all around this piece here, and then also for this piece as well. So what I'm going to do is zoom out here and then just press the A key to make sure everything is deselected. So I can now press the L key and the L key. That is going to select all of the linked vertices. And I now just want to hide all of the rest of the mesh to get it out of the way. So if you press Shift H, that is going to hide everything that isn't selected. So now we can just see the pieces which are causing the problem. So what I can do now to cut through the mesh is I can press 1 on the numpad for front view, and I'm just going to zoom in here to this area, and I can hold down the Z button and go into the wireframe. So now what I want to do is I want to press the K button, and the K button is going to bring up the knife tool. And so I want to use the knife tool to cut through the geometry and add a loop right there. Now before I actually cut through the geometry, I want to press the C button. So right down here, you can see the C button toggles between the cut through being on and off. And I want to press the C button to make sure the cut through is turned on because I want to cut through the entire mesh. So I want to cut through the entire thing. I don't just want to cut through the front face. I want to cut through all of the mesh. So I'm now going to click right here, and this is going to actually place the cut. Now I could just eyeball it and kind of bring it up here, but instead of eyeballing that, I want to bring it up exactly on the Z axis. So I can hit Z, that's going to bring it up on the Z axis, and then I can just click to place it right there, and then I can hit enter. So that is going to add a cut all the way through. And if I hold down the Z button, I can go back into the solid view and I can just navigate up here. So because we had the cut through turned on, the knife tool cut through all of the mesh. And so it added this loop right here. And then it also added this loop right here. So I'm just selecting them to show you. So it cut through the mesh and it added all of those cuts there. So now if you zoom in here, you can see the bevel modifier is working. So all along the edges, the bevel modifier looks good. Let's press Alt H, and Alt H is going to unhide everything that we hid before. So I can press the A key to deselect. Let's press the Tab key to go back to object mode, and I can just zoom in somewhere to the mesh. So I can now change the amount, and the amount is actually going to change how big the bevel is. And I just want to bring it out to about that big. That's totally fine, just an amount like that. And then I can also change the segments. So if I just turn it down to 1, you can see that's very sharp. I want to turn the segments up to like 4, and that way it has a more smooth edge. All right, so now it's adding bevels. So I can just use the object context menu to shade the object smooth. I use the right click select. So I hit the W key and then click on Shade Smooth with the object context menu, but you can just right click and then click on Shade Smooth. Or you can also click on Object and then click on the Shade Smooth button. So now if I zoom into any part of the mesh, you can see what the bevel modifier is doing. So this is going to make the scene look much more realistic because those edges aren't perfectly sharp. All of the edges have a tiny little bit of a bevel there, and that is going to make it look much more realistic. Now I also want to add an array modifier because I want to array the entire passage over so that it is longer. So let's click on Add Modifier, and I'm going to go right down here under Generate, and I'm going to click on Array. So the array is kind of like the mirror modifier, but instead of it just mirroring it over once, you can mirror it over on the X, Y, or Z axis, and you can continue to array again and again. So it's basically going to duplicate it and move it over. So you can see right now it's arraying it over on the X axis, but I want to instead array it over on the Y axis. So if you scroll right down here, here's the array modifier. You can see there is the factor, the X, Y, and Z. And right now the factor is set to 1. So you could change this, and that is going to change the spacing in between each object. I want to turn the factor X to 0 because I don't want to array it over on the X axis. I do want to array it over on the Y axis. So on the Y value, I'm going to hit 1 and then enter. So this way it's just going to array the object over by 1 object's width because we turned the Y value to 1. So now if I zoom in here, you can see if I toggle between seeing the array modifier, you can see there is where the array modifier ends and starts with the next one. So if I zoom in here, you can see there that is seamless and there's just that little piece there. So now if I zoom back out here, you can see that the tunnel is much longer. And if you want to make the tunnel longer and longer, you can turn up the count. So this count value is going to tell it how many times it's going to array it. So you could just do it many times. You could continue to array this out. And now if I zoom in there, you can see the tunnel is very, very long. I don't want to array it out that much. I just want to turn the count value to 2. And that way it's just going to basically mirror the entire thing over and just add another one right there. But you could turn this up more if you wanted to array it out longer and just make it really long. I'm just going to go with an array value of 2. So now you can see we have a really cool sci-fi tunnel. Now there is just one more thing that I want to do. I want to give this tunnel a little bit more depth. So I want to take one of these pieces here, one of these metal pieces which are coming out, and I want to bring it out a bit more. And this way it's going to give it more depth and make the Sci-Fi Passage look a bit more bumpy. So I'm going to press the Tab key again to go into edit mode. And I'm going to zoom into this main piece here, which is right in the center. So it's the piece with these little gaps and then also that pipe right in there. So I'm going to hover my mouse over the objects and press L. That'll select the linked vertices. So just select that object. And then also you can click right here to go to the face select, and then hover your mouse over this pipe and press L, and that is going to again select the linked vertices. And those are all the ones that I want to select. I don't really want to select these pieces here, so I just want to select those 2 pieces. So I can now press 1 on the numpad, and that is going to take me to the front view that I can kind of zoom in. So I now just want to push this closer into the center of the passage. So I can press G to grab, and let's hit X to bring it over on the X axis, and I just want to bring this entire piece over. And again, because we have the clipping on with the mirror, it's going to just push that into the center of the mirror. It's not going to overlap. So I just want to bring that to right about there and then just place it right there. So now you can see this piece is actually jutting out quite a bit, whereas these pieces over here, they aren't jutting out quite as much. So if I press the tab key to go back to object mode, this is going to give the Sci-Fi Passage a lot more depth, and I find that this really helps to make the Sci-Fi Passage look much more interesting because it's not super straight. Every now and then as you're going through the Sci-Fi Passage, there's these parts right here and these parts bump out a lot. Alright, so I'm just going to press Ctrl S to save one more time, and this is going to wrap it up for part 1 of the tutorial series. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you were easily able to follow along, and I hope you've been enjoying it. So I will be uploading one part each day of the tutorial series on my YouTube channel, so if you'd like to check out part 2, I'll have the link in the description when it's released, and I'll also throw part 2 right up there on the end screen when it is released. And again, if you'd like to help support me and this channel, you can also purchase the tutorial files on my Gumroad store and Patreon page. I will have the links in the description. And if you've enjoyed this tutorial series, a great way to help support me and give me a little tip is by sending a super thanks right down there underneath this video. But I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in part 2.